welcome to yet another edition of Buffalo Bills Pregame. And what an offseason it's been. Jared, glad to see you. Long time no see on the show, I believe.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And you got a lot to say today, so we're going to be excited. Getting right into it. Top news. As I see it, the top news is, are we tanking or are we not? Also, should we be tanking or should we not? And we both have pretty strong, if not differing opinions. And I think that's the category you can put it into, but it's too broad a topic to get into altogether at first. So let's break into some of the details and what happened over the preseason that's led us up to this point right now. Starting off really going into old news with Rex Ryan being fired and starting off the chain of events. So with the perspective that we have now, how do you feel about Rex getting the axe after 2 years?
I feel that it was not enough time. In the whole drought, Rex Ryan was, I think, the exception to the rule, and I feel that McDermott and Beane are more of the rule. Like, we try something new. There's lots of spinning going on in the media and from the Bills themselves, and we're just rolling. We're seeing things that aren't good, and they're making it seem like they are. Which always annoys me, because like, if we're going to tank, let's just tank. If we're going to try, let's just try. Don't just tank but say we're trying. I hate that. But with Rex, we had something, and I'm not saying I'm a huge Rex fan, I'm not going there, but I am saying it was something different. We signed really good players and traded for players in free agency, and it seemed like we were really going somewhere, and I think we should have gave it the time. But within, I think, half the season, fans were calling for him to get fired. And then in season 2, I mean, it wasn't a good season 2. They brought Rob up, and it was silly. But, sorry, I'm getting frustrated just thinking about it.
The two-person bike was silly.
It was
exactly
silly.
The word for it. But don't you think Marrone would have been a bigger break, seeing as he led us to winning season?
It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if he stayed. I do think that. I never liked Marrone, though. I never really thought Marrone was going to take us past 500. I never really saw him even getting us into the playoffs. So it would have been interesting to see if we would have kept that consistency, if they could have proven me wrong. I'm not saying they wouldn't have, but we'll never know.
I think the most objective of Rex, the people who are against Rex and are most objective about it are going to point to the lack of discipline. Look at all the personal foul penalties, like just players allowing themselves to lose their heads and make stupid mistakes. That, I mean, you take away a lot of those personal fouls that either gives an offense an extra 15 yards or pretty much forces us to punt every time.
Right.
We're winning a couple of those games that we didn't, and things are different. Like, had he been able to rein in that discipline or even get 11 players on the field on a consistent basis, like, don't you think that things that a strong-willed coach that Rex Ryan presents himself to be should be able to rein in those things at least? Like, shouldn't that be an expectation that you at least discipline your players enough that they're not costing you games with penalties and getting enough, like you making sure that all the players know who's on the field? Like, don't you think those are just unforgivable sins as a coach, though? Some
really silly things like players on the field is one thing, but I mean, so far we've seen the exact same problems, even almost a little bit worse. I know it's just the preseason, but I've gone to the camps. The camps look even less disciplined to me, in my opinion, when I went to the 2 camps I went to this offseason. And again, the penalties are happening. Well, we had 15 in the one game, I think, and then like 10 in the other 2, and I don't count the 4th preseason game, where we actually barely had any. But I don't see any change between like McDermott, who's supposed to be this disciplined guy, versus Rex, who is sideshow bonkers, and yet the same problems are happening. So are these players just not coachable? I don't think it's quite that, but I think a lot of it's more on the players than the coaches with regard to that discipline.
Okay, moving forward, as we must due to time, there's been some moves that the Bills have made personnel-wise that would make it seem like they aren't necessarily trying to put forward the best team forward. I think Watkins has to be the headline as far as these moves go. Probably the most promising player going forward that the Bills had going into the season on the roster is now gone. We did get a wide receiver back in another trade. Like, the trades likely wouldn't have happened if we weren't able to like get a tit for a tat in terms of like the positions. But we certainly downgraded at wide receiver at a position where the one wide receiver that could best utilize the skills that Tyrod has is no longer on the team. So what are your opinions? Let's start off with that trade, with the Watkins exchange and getting Matthews.
You might be surprised by this. I like the trade. Not at the very beginning. Like, for the first 20 seconds, I was pissed as I think as any normal Bills fan would be. But then I started thinking about the trade, and it's like, okay, we got the same positions back, and we added draft picks. And Sammy really did not live up to what we thought he was going to be. He was injured all the time. He was not an Odell Beckham. He wasn't even a Mike Evans. Mm-hmm. He was not that top tier. And you could go back to, 2015 and think, oh, that second half of that season, he was kind of there. But, I mean, okay, for like a sixth of your time on the team, you may have been top tier. It's not enough to say you're top tier.
Well, coming out of Clemson, he was a screen receiver.
Yeah.
And we never, ever utilized him to the maximum of his ability.
Yeah, that's true, too. I mean, and he was billed so high going into that draft. Like, I remember I wanted the Bills to trade up for him. But like you just said, I never really thought about how we would utilize him. And that's something I regret not thinking about. And maybe he'll do better with the Rams, but honestly, guys, I'll be shocked if he does really good with the Rams. We'll see.
I mean, I know it's the thing that you can't past results or past performance doesn't guarantee future results, and there's no way to guarantee he's going to be injured a lot in his career. But we were without him so often that we were heavy on the top. Yeah. We had skill at the top of wide receiver, not a lot of depth, and I think it'd be better to the other way, be thinner at the top and have depth, considering that you have injuries at wide receiver, and that's something I want to talk about when we get to our roster coming up.
Sure.
But some other trades just happened recently. Reggie Ragland got traded to Kansas City for no player at all, for just draft picks. So that's certainly, we're not improving by getting rid of Reggie Ragland.
Absolutely
Maybe
not.
After evaluating and be like, I don't know what his role is going to be on this team, and we might as well get something for value rather than him riding the pine. I understand that thinking, but we are not a better team this year for him being gone. But 31 teams in the league, why did we trade him to the team that we hope to do poorly? This is my problem with this move.
Okay,
like, of all the teams, why Kansas? Like, we want Kansas City to be bad. Like, do we know? Is he a cancer in the locker room? Are we like?
I don't think it's a cancer. I don't think it's a cancer, but I do think that they honestly feel that he wasn't good enough to be on the Bills, and I think that's, for them, an okay reason to send him to Kansas City.
But is there any other team, like 30 other teams, no one else wanted him?
Maybe they only talk to the Chiefs. I can't speak to that.
I mean, I don't mind getting rid of him if we're not going to use him, but why
but my
Kansas City?
I hear your point. My point's a little different. My thing with Ragland is and this kind of goes back to my unfortunately negative thing with the coaches, because I don't want to be negative with these coaches. I don't. But he was the middle linebacker for Alabama, and I think you gotta. Everyone's not going to just fit directly into your scheme. Some players really can't, and I get that. But then there's other players that have really good talent, and you think, okay,
you have to
make it work around.
Use this person,
Yeah, but if middle linebacker, and I realize it may have not been the same as Rex's, but like, I think that, like you just, I think they could have found a way to use Reggie Ragland if they really put a little bit of effort into it.
Or a lot of effort. One thing that was really interesting to both you and I was the career of Anquan Boldin here in Buffalo.
Yes.
The storied
Never
career.
forget. Never forget.
I'd be interested to hear his story. Like, I would love to sit down and have a beer and be like, man, what happened? What is your take on the Boldin situation?
I think the take on that is he signed up for something he didn't really sign up for, because he saw Watkins was on the team, and he saw a team that he thought was actually trying. Mm-hmm. Then he got on the team. 3 or 4 days later, they trade Watkins. Then they go to Philly. Teams all over the place. And then I think he just realized, hey, I don't want to spend my last year of my career on a team like this. And I think what's so sad about it is that, like, you know, we can always assume what's going on in the locker room all we want. But there's our pretty good proof right there that one of the best receivers in the history of the game took one look at the Bills and within less than 2 weeks was like, not for me.
Yeah, I'll go home.
Yeah.
Play golf.
Which is just sad. Which it just makes us look so mismanaged in the way they handled that. Like they went from having 2 receivers to the none, and now like the commercials are like, look at how good Jordan Matthews is with his hurt chest.
Just real quick, for me, rank the careers as Buffalo Bills of
how many other
Calvin Cobbs, Vince Young, and Anquan Boldin.
Oh my God. I guess they don't. I put Vince Young as 3rd, and then probably Cobb, and then Boldin number 1. Boldin number 1 out of those 3 actually.
And quick honorable mention in this conversation: Kyle Orton started the team for a year, and like after this, he's like, you know what? That's okay.
Yeah, he knew what was going to happen. Good for him.
So yeah, he bailed out when he could. So what do you think this means going forward? Are we tanking?
We're like semi-tanking.
And that's the worst place to be. That's the 6 and 9 seasons we've been having, or 6 and 10 seasons, 7 and 9 seasons are the worst place we could. That's where we've been, and that's the worst place to be. And if that's what we're shooting for, like, we're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
I'd rather be a Cleveland fan.
Or
New York.
This will take too long if we actually start this discussion again. We did this off camera, but I'm not a fan of tanking just because I honestly don't believe it works. I don't think it's like the other major sports where it does. I mean, this is what I'm afraid of, and I don't know if you're about to ask this, but I'll just say it now. Sure, we can have a rough season. We can even use those really good draft picks we have last year to trade up and get, a Sam Darnold or a Lamar Jackson or whoever. But then the question's going to ultimately be, how patient are we going to be after that? Because in a way, with a rookie quarterback, regardless of how you put it, you're starting off brand new. Like the guy's not in his prime. There's very few exceptions in this league where the rookie quarterback amounts to something. So how many years are we going to give? Are we going to be talking about 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021? And how long is McDermott and Beane going to be a part of that? Because let's say we run out of patience in 2019, which I hope not. But that's 3 years from now. And then we can those two. Then we bring in another guy. Is he going to want Sam Darnold? Or
Vrabel. Mike Vrabel.
Or Vrabel, inside joke. And, okay, let's say they bring in Vrabel, and I owe you that $6. Then what happens with Sam Darnold? Then he drafts like a 4th rounder in the future round. Oh, that's the guy, because Sam Darnold hasn't done enough. He's only made the Pro Bowl twice or something.
As an alternate.
Yeah. I don't think we've talked about Peterman yet, have we?
No.
Talked about a lot, though.
Peterman is getting a lot of talk around town. We're talking about a completely inexperienced 5th-round quarterback versus Tyrod Taylor, who is probably the best quarterback of the drought.
Yeah,
I can't see an argument otherwise. I mean, Bledsoe was at the end of his career. I mean, those two. It's between those two, without a doubt.
Absolutely,
it's between those two, without having to have a conversation about it. And here is Peterman, completely inexperienced. Is this just a case of the most popular position on the Buffalo Bills is the backup quarterback, going back to Alex Van Pelt?
But after Losman, it was Trent. After Trent, it was Fitz. After Fitz, well, actually, Fitz, I think, lucked out too, except for your Vince Young thing. And then Orton, then EJ, I guess, when he was the backup to Kevin Kolb for that very brief period of time. And then Orton to EJ, and then Tyrod Taylor to Cassel. So that's what I mean. That's the same pattern. We need to break the pattern. The only time we broke it was Rex. I'm going to go off on a tangent.
Well, I mean, as long as you've been doing this show, I've been saying to break the pattern and tank. And
okay, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I got excited with Rex. I did, but
Yeah.
I mean, you've watched this show for a long time, and you know I've always been like, don't half-ass it, go all the way in. And I'm just so scared that we're gonna half-ass it again. I might buy a Jets jersey.
Oh, no, don't do
There's
that.
who's named Williams on the Jets.
Leonard Williams.
All right, there is one. So the Jets.
Yes.
Glad we brought it up.
Yeah, that is the
game
right?
that's coming out. Who's gonna win this game?
Oh, I guess we're going straight into
just
predictions.
straight. Yeah. I think the most interesting conversation is after that.
Okay. I am actually predicting... This is the most irony. We just badmouthed the Bills for, 10 minutes now? But I am going to predict the Bills win 14-10.
Okay, I'll pick the Bills winning too because I'm sure the Jets are tanking better than we are. It seems like they've thrown any dignity out of it, and we have no shame. We're just gonna lose and draft a quarterback in a miserable lacrosse score 18-14. It's gonna be a goofy game. I think the Bills will win.
6 field
But
goals.
I think the most interesting conversation, it's possible. I think the most interesting conversation is what if we do lose? What if we have a head start on the tanking train to the one team that seems Cleveland and the Jets seem to be racing to be tanking the worst. But what if after week 1 we have the lead in the tanking team?
The truth is it's hard to say how the rest of the season is going to go after that. Even though I think it'll be pretty dire if we do lose the Jets game. At that point, I'm almost on board with what you're saying because I like Tyrod a lot. I really do. Not just because I have his jersey, but I really
factor.
I really do believe he's been the best quarterback we've had, and I don't think he's ever, except for that first season, I don't think he's ever really gotten a fair chance. He's played good, and I think he's been punished for it unfairly.
He's exciting to watch.
Yeah.
He has the ball in his hand. He's rolling out of the pocket. Mm-hmm. He can throw it long. He can beat you on the run. Besides, the last person to feel that electricity in the crowd was when Roscoe Parrish was returning punts, and you just oh, something really cool might happen. And I think Tyrod, there's something to be said for that. I didn't.
No, you're fine. But I would say I truthfully believe that no matter what happens this season, unless really good in the playoffs, that's the only way this will happen. Tyrod's gone next year, unfortunately. I 100% believe that, regardless, even if we don't draft a quarterback next year. So my thought is, if we lose that Jets game, I hate to say this, but yeah, you might as well put in the little gem. Put in Peterman.
It's a one game. It's a make or break of the season. It's a must win. Week 1. I
think we'll lose a few more games after that, and then they would make the change. Not after week 1, that would be silly. But and the truth is, Tyrod's supposed to play week 1, but he might not. And there's a small possibility that he's still in concussion protocol.
Right.
So.
Great Bills trivia, season opener trivia, McCown versus Peterman.
Oh, God.
Talk about that in 20 years.
Yeah.
All right, so longer view of the season. Where do you see the Bills doing?
My official prediction, I think they can range anywhere between 1-15 and 10-6. Because the one thing we haven't talked about is their defense.
They won't win 11 games, is what we're going to say.
And they won't lose all of them. Their defense is actually pretty decent, which could make for a few surprise games this season. So I'm giving them a very generous, and I mean this generously, 5-11. I think that's actually generous. I think
it's actually kind of the middle of your range.
A lot worse. Yeah, I really think it could be a lot worse hypothetically, but I'm giving them a generous 5-11 because of the defense.
I'd be happier with 5-11 than my prediction, but I think I'm afraid my worst fears can come true. We're gonna just middle it again. So I'm gonna say 7-8-1. All right, well, we'll be back at the very least for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yep, we haven't done the Los Angeles Chargers
All right,
ever,
teams keep moving around. Teams keep moving around, and Buffalo's pregame keeps chugging on.
Yep, we'll see the Mexico City Texans soon.
Until then.
Until what?
Peterman.